Hello everyone, and welcome to the patch notes for update 7.5 on World of Warships Blitz. And we are going to start that from the bottom today, because that's where the most interesting bit is. And this isn't actually part of 7.5, but it's in the it's in the what's next section. So this is probably just an outlook for future changes, but I'm going to start with that because it is one of the most interesting and, in my opinion, biggest changes that we've seen in a long time. Single realm matchmaking. So if you're new to the game currently has 3 servers. There's the Asian, the European, and the North American server. And if you are playing on a server, that means that's where your account lives, and that means that's where the people are you're playing against. Now, what they're proposing here is that, for at least from what I understand, is that the matchmaking is going to happen across servers. And this is a really, really big change because one of the biggest problems right now is that you are facing, well, there are not enough players around oftentimes, especially after hours, to fill up the 7v7 battles reliably, and you end up with large amounts of bots. And it has all kinds of nasty side effects, and we've been harping on about the whole bot situation, everything for a long time. But if we can get cross-realm matchmaking, this might be a problem of the past, simply because we get... Simply because even if you are playing, let's say in my example, right? I'm in Australia. If I'm playing on the Asian server, then my local time when it gets a little busy or busy enough to actually get full battles is somewhere around 8-9 p.m. So I actually do have to do a lot of test plays in the night, which is not ideal for me because Australia is relatively far ahead in terms of time zone of everyone. Whereas if we now have cross-realm matchmaking and I play at a time where, let's say at 10 in the morning during a work day, where in Australia not many people are playing, obviously, and where the other realms on the Asian server mostly are probably still asleep, then I might be able to catch somebody from the North American server who's actually online right now and meet them in battle. Now, there is going to be a challenge for this because we're obviously going to be talking about lag, and there will have to be some form of improvement to communication. So I think the big challenge for wargaming here is that they will need to deal with stability issues and make sure that this works reliably. And even if you do inter-server communication, which is a lot more controllable than the clients, you still have to, let's say, between I don't know where the Asian server sits. It's probably in Singapore because that's where a lot of internet infrastructure tends to hang around in the region, or somewhere in Japan. And even from there, if you are talking to a server, say in US East, then you're going to have a certain amount of lag. So the game needs to be able to handle that, and we will see how well that works. But this is huge, and this could mean a lot more games against actual players, even at times when it's relatively quiet, and I think that would be amazing. All right, so I wanted to start out with that. Let's skip back to the top and then go through the regular things that are actually happening in 7.5. So that does not happen in 7.5. That's the outlook thing, future thing. All right, we're going to have UI theme and camel themes and all kinds of stuff. So wintry theme things, we'll see what that looks like. January is going to be cartoonish themes. We'll see what it looks like, but it's not a huge thing. Honor and bravery sounds a bit more like my sort of taste, but yeah, this is all visuals, so we'll see. More interestingly, new event mode, a regatta. So it's a sort of puzzle thing, puzzle-based progression. And you get final rewards. It smells a bit like Sonar Sweep revamped, but we shall see. I'm sure there will be ample use of the you're almost there. Just spend a little gold to progress mechanic. So I think the big question here is going to be: can they make these in such a way that people who cannot or do not want to spend money on the game still get a reasonable reward for their effort? That is going to be the big challenge. But other than that. Yeah, interesting things that bring people to back to the game is always good. Yeah, you have to run specific missions to unlock tiles, and then you complete the whole, and then you get a prize. That's basically the idea. And obviously, yes, you can probably pay gold for instantly finishing this. It is a free-to-play game after all. So each regatta event is different, so there's no repetitiveness in it. I don't know how different, if it's just different kind of images or, but it says multiple customizable missions, different ship types, different game modes. So I guess they're jumping it around a bit. And again, it's good to mix these things up, and it can get people interested to play game modes that are otherwise maybe not as commonly frequented. Which brings us to the new game mode, a tournament. This again sounds very interesting. So it's literally a different game mode, similar somewhat maybe to ranked. You do have to pay to get in. It mentions in-game currency, so I'm assuming it's silver. After, if you win, you proceed. So how do you win? What is this? Is this a 1v1? Is this just regular battles and the winning team proceeds and the losing team is out? Very interesting questions that aren't necessarily answered in the patch notes. So we will see. We will see how this turns out. I'm assuming it's going to be team based, but which obviously has the downside of somewhat you depending on your team. But bring your carry pants, I'd say. New global shell effect. So some of the special camos actually give you special shell effects. You can switch that on such that you see other people shoot with special shell effects, but it's apparently only for your client. So it's yet another kind of visual update, but it's completely optional. So this will be, if this is enabled by default, it'll be the first thing I switch off. But we will see. The game is moving a lot into the collab, colorful space. Let's put it that way. So as long as it's disableable, I'm all good about it. Talking about colorful, new map, Colorful Islands. Yeah. Rainbows and unicorns for everybody. We will see what that looks like. No idea. Anyway, more interesting things. New tech line, Commonwealth cruisers. And apparently they are going to be HE spammers. So high fire chance, good HE shells. Poor battleship players, yes, we are going to get, as if the Japanese light cruisers weren't bad enough, we are going to get more HE spammers. And there are some new American carriers out there somewhere on the horizon, I think, as well. So, yeah, joy. They come with a combat instruction. So, instead of the way the Spanish combat instruction works, where you have to have a certain amount of hits and then it activates and then you get things. Was it the Spanish? No, I can't remember what it was, but there was one. It was the Pan American. Sorry, not the Spanish one. The Spanish one with the burst fires. The Pan Americans one had the combat instructions. Yeah, there we go. So it depends on starting fires. So it's actually more RNG dependent, because depending on how much of a fire chance they give these ships, it is basically RNG at the end of the day. You can sit in a ship with a 5% fire chance and lob shells for half the game and not get a single fire. It's entirely possible. So, but that is a combat instruction, and it's called Spark. So I'm assuming it increases the fire chance, maybe. So that'd be kind of interesting. So you set a single fire, trigger the derp damage control, wait for 10 seconds, and then switch on the combat instruction and set triple permas. So yeah, that might be interesting. Purely offensive light cruisers, I am a fan, similar to what we have with the scout cruisers on the Pan-Asian line, and no defensive benefits. Yeah. Obvious. Setting more fires is not a defensive mechanism. And we're getting crawling smoke with these as well. So it's not a fuel smoke. I think we've seen this on I think it was the Druid which had this, but it's a different type of smoke screen. So I think you take it with you on half speed or something like that. I'll have to look it up again, but I'm pretty sure we've seen this before, but it's not a particularly common thing yet. So yet another addition to the ever-increasing list of smoke screens. I'm going to have to update my smoke screen overview video. Early access in January coming for the Commonwealth light cruisers, and you'll see them. You'll see me play those for sure. This is something I will not be missing out on. More legendary modules. What do we get? The Colombo gets a legendary module, which increases it's a purely beneficial one. Not all legendary modules are purely beneficial. Some of them have drawbacks, but it's 7% range and 7% reload. That is relatively powerful. Usually you get the 4% improvements or 5% on the reload module, but with the turret survivability downside, which makes sense. If you reload faster, you're not storing your ammunition properly. But this one gives 7% range and minus 7% reload time. So that is overall, it'll depend. It's probably going to be in slot 1. So you're probably throwing out precision for that. But I'd say I guess it's definitely worth it, especially range is going to be good. And we'll have to see how that stacks with the scout planes and everything else. The Vermont gets I think that's similar to the Yamato's, somewhat similar to the Yamato's legendary module, in that you get 10% reload time up, which is huge for a ship like the Vermont, but you're losing main battery traverse speed, which is not a big deal, because the Vermont is a back row artillery ship. You're not doing any kind of flexible and mobile gameplay in that thing. So 10% reload is pretty big on that, and losing an 8% main battery traverse is not huge. So yeah, definitely plays into that. The Schlieffen gets a module. I'm assuming that's going to sit in slot 2, where you definitely want the engine. It does give 20% fire and flooding resistance, which isn't going to be 20 percentage points, but 20% of the existing fire and flooding resistance, which I don't know what the base value for the Schlieffen is. It's probably going to be something like 15% or something. So we're talking about an extra 3%, which is it's marginal. It will not make a noticeable difference, really. It reduces the fire and flooding time by 25%, however. So how fires work is they do a certain amount of damage over time. So in effect, this is a 20% damage reduction on the fires. And this is where the fire and flooding resistance comes in as well, because the fire and flooding resistance is not just a module, or it's not just a stat that changes how easy it is to set the ship on fire, but it is also a stat that determines how much damage you're taking from the fire. So buffing the fire and flooding resistance slightly decreases the amount of damage you're taking from the fire. But the fire and flooding time is going to be a much bigger impact, because it is basically shaving off 25% of the fire damage that you're taking. So I'm still not convinced about this, but it'll be interesting to see. Now, if we were talking about something like the Montana that has a massive fire and flooding resistance to begin with, then and the AA to defend itself against carriers, which are normally the ones causing you all the permafloods and permafires to begin with, then I would say absolutely. For the Schlieffen, I am not sure I want to trade acceleration for that, especially if you're dealing with torpedo-rich environments. So something that will need to be tested a little bit. We'll see if that's worth it. New premium ships. What do we get? We get the San Francisco. Oh yeah, I'm already looking forward to the history section on that one. We get the Blücher. Okay, so another Hipper class tier 8. We get the Eskimo, which I believe Eskimo is not it's a bit of a derogatory term, but for native people in certain regions in the north. But that is what the destroyer was called. So, history, right? what you're going to do. And back at the time, it was considered a perfectly viable name. So I'm assuming that, no, we're not going down the route of changing that name into something else. It's basically a Cossack. Now, the Cossack has been possibly power crept a little bit. I haven't played the Cossack in absolute ages, but it's a bit more of a scout cruiser, really. So we'll have to see how that goes. We're getting again, potentially very hypothetical Pan-Asian ship that is a Pan-Asian Riga, better mobility, enhanced AA, and better accuracy. Okay, but potentially lower damage. So plus you get scout plane on that, which might be an interesting switch, because the Riga is definitely a dangerous ship, and if you can get the range up on that thing, plus maybe better torpedoes and deep waters, that might be worth it. We will see. There is a Soviet Tier 9 battleship and limited torpedo protection and mobility. Okay, but good concealment. An array of secondaries. Okay, so a Soviet brawler at Tier 9. We will see how well that turns out. We get a British destroyer, Jutland, at Tier 9. A sister of the Jutland. So we'll see what they do to that. More damage for extended reload. So if that's all they changed, it's probably not a huge difference. A European battleship, so an Austro-Hungarian battleship, the Karl Johann. Okay, versatile and solid ship. Is equipped with main guns, making it adaptable to various combat scenarios. Yes. Yes, it's nice of you, Wong Yiming, that you have to point that out. Yes, it is equipped with main guns. Main guns, auto secondaries, and torpedoes. So no manual secondaries on that thing. We'll see about that. And an Italian Tier 10 premium Christopher Colombo, which doesn't get SAP, but get okay. So we get HEAP mains and SAP auto secondaries. One of the big benefits of the Colombo is the insane capability against destroyers. Because unlike on PC, where they patched that out very, very quickly, on Blitz we've kept the insanity that SAP shells mostly don't overpenetrate, which means that a sub-salvo can one-shot an enemy destroyer at Tier 10. So the Sicilia doesn't get that, but she gets probably the regular HE and AP shells. I have noticed that not most, but a lot of Colombo players actually don't understand shells at all and use their semi-armor piercing shells against everything, which makes the Colombo very ineffective against heavily armored targets, because the semi-armor piercings are really not that good against cruisers or battleships, especially battleships. But and yeah, SAP auto secondaries. It's not an equivalent exchange. So we'll see how much of an upgrade that really is to the Colombo, because if you're dealing with a destroyer, having SAP on the main guns is an absolute death sentence, and every destroyer what they're sold is not going to get spotted anywhere within shooting range of a Christopher Colombo. With the auto secondaries, you're talking about close quarters, plus you don't actually get to control where they shoot, which means if the destroyer is using WASD hacks and moves their ship slightly, then they're likely to miss. Anyway, a very interesting American Tier 9 destroyer, an aviation destroyer. So we're going to get basically an American Groningen. We'll see how that turns out. And talking about the Dutch, we're going to get a Tier 10 Gouden Leeuw version, premium. Features a stylish camo. Okay, yeah. Reduced main gun caliber. Okay. Improved range and accuracy. Yeah, I can probably live with that. Airstrike, boosted airstrike, longer cooldown. We'll see. The Gouden Leeuw is not one of the most powerful ships out there, and does struggle in her role. So we'll see how that turns out. A couple more Pan-Asian ships, just of the usual variety. We get a Venezia and a Lenin. And we get a Black Jinan. Okay, we'll see what they do to that one. some updates on the Spanish Tier 8 cruiser on the model, and a couple of localization things, mystery bug fixes. Let's see if anything. I don't have high hopes usually, but let's see if anything interesting is in here. Add pop-ups, of course, the bug that we were all concerned about. Commander icons wouldn't display when obtained from a crate. Okay. Emoticons in Windows. AI ship names. Yeah, you've seen that some of the localization property files were missing for certain ships that were showing up as bots, and then had like just their IDs, the fallback to the underlying IDs. So they fixed that. Image scale on the super ship pop-up. Again, the problems we've all been concerned about, and issues with the secondary guns on the Annapolis clipping through things. Okay, I didn't know did the Annapolis have secondary guns? Yeah, it did probably. Yeah. Unique camos. So we're getting a few camos, and the Star Trek collaboration seems to be happening. So well, the USS Enterprise probably going to be in demand when that comes in. We're get a couple of. Now, look, I am a massive fan of Star Trek, especially of anything up to and including Voyager. Everything after Voyager, not really. So obviously TOS, TNG, Deep Space Nine was one of the best series out there. Voyager was okay. I enjoyed Voyager, but the stuff that came afterwards, did not feel it quite as much, and especially the newer stuff. It's completely unwatchable for me. So. But seeing Picard and Spock sounds like they somewhat agree with me in that one. And while I'm not a massive fan of collaborations, it is just the reality of the game, and we will see what we do with it. More portraits, more Transformers, more shenanigans. Yeah, that is definitely Star Trek, and more stuff. Yeah, lots more visuals for people who care about this. More winters themed stuff. More titles. Titles have lost all meaning to me at this point. It doesn't mean anything anymore because it's just random words at this stage. Previously, if someone had a certain title that was linked to a certain amount of medals, that could still have a little bit of a meaning, even though they were farmable in ways. But new collection book stuff, daily logins. Let's see what we get. In December, you get the Arkansas. It's a tier 4 premium. It's nice to have. It's not particularly unique, I believe, and it's tier 4, but it's a nice ship to have. January, we're getting an Italian epic commander. Okay. We'll have to see what he's capable of. And in February, you get the Wang He, which is an older premium at tier 6, but actually not completely terrible. It's a decent tier 6 light cruiser. I think only 6 guns on that thing, but it's not terrible. It has some nice capabilities, and I'll have to retest, and I'll do that. I'll have to reevaluate if it's been power crept to the point where it's really not worth it anymore. But these are login reward updates, so all you really got to do is go and log in. All right, let's get a move on because it's 20 minutes in already. Terry, stops wasting time. Ship balancing. Okay, what's happened? Obviously the Japanese cruisers, at least the Yodo wasn't powerful enough just yet, and get significantly improved torpedo angles, because that thing clearly wasn't enough of a menace already as it was. Soviet cruisers, time to reach full speed and reduced by 10%. That is good. The Amagi loses some HE damage and gets some AP damage. And this continues with the Izumo and not the Yamato. Is that going to make the Izumo a good ship? No. Is that a good buff? Yes, because the Izumo needs it. I think the Amagi at this point is starting to become an actually decent ship. Now that the turret bug's fixed and that we're starting to see some more buffs. So is it going to make the Izumo great? No. But it's going to make the Amagi better. and that's definitely good. Tiger 59 increased hit points. Yeah, I don't think that was necessarily the problem the Tiger 59 has. Thunderer, yes. What do we get? Firing range increase, main battery traverse, and improved shell velocity. I have not played the Thunderer since that thing came out, but I'll give her another spin probably, just to see how good that is. Then the Rhode Island gets that thing was a bit funny. More damage, better dispersion, faster reload. Yeah, all good things to get. The super ships. The secondary reload on the Satsuma has been increased, and the dispersion has been improved. Yes, the dispersion on the Satsuma improved is good. And they have taken away the space lasers. The Japanese had the secret laser project on the Satsuma with the secondaries. That's a shame. And I don't think it was 666 there. Someone snuck something evil in there. That was more like 800 odd than the secondaries were doing. But reduced reload time. And she got a bit of a nerf there in that the deck fires are that she's more susceptible to fire. Ignition probability seems to be one of those hidden stats that we don't get to see. So it's always nice to glean that out of the notes. All right, let's wrap this up here. Annapolis, she gets an AA defense 3, yes please, and an AA buff, yes please, absolutely. That thing should be an AA monster. For all that we care. More Transformer stuff. I'm not really going to look into that too much. And yes, Star Trek. Star Trek's coming up, and we're going to get obviously the Enterprise. We're going to get a German Tier 7 battleship. We'll see what that's going to be. So it's going to be either Prinz Heinrich or Gneisenau, assuming what we're getting here. We're going to get a Japanese Tier 7 destroyer, so likely an Akatsuki, and a Fiji. So I don't see the. I really don't agree with the assignment here with the Star Trek equivalents, but okay, it is what it is. You needed one on each class. I see what you did there, and that's it. What's next? Commonwealth cruisers, UI overhaul, Ninja Turtles, and yes, the more important things: single realm matchmaking and a fast gameplay mode. I don't know what that's supposed to. I mean, even faster. Blitz is already really short to the point. We will see what we will see. We will see how that goes. It brings you right into the action with minimal weight. So maybe it's a deployment closer together or something, rather than deploying at the usual spawn points. Anyway, so fast gameplay and single realm matchmaking, major features they'll be working on in the next couple of months, and it can come in, can potentially in as upgrade 8.0, which is the January upgrade next year, or in later ones. So we'll see. I hope that they are taking their time. Last one, a little jab at the Australian government, because Warships Blitz is now classified as M in Australia because of loot boxes. While I completely agree with this assessment, because, kids, I also completely disagree with this because parents' responsibility. The Australian government has been very active recently. If you're interested, look up things like social media ban for under 16s and similar proposals that they're currently looking at to allay concerns by parents about what their kids are doing online and making sure parents don't need to actually know what they're doing. Anyway, personal opinions aside, that was it for today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. If you've been sticking around all this long, thank you very much. Bye bye.